Welcome to Capital Currents, where the flow of business news and market trends keeps you ahead of the tide. I'm your watchdog, and today is Monday, August 18th. In today's episode, I'll tell you about Warren Buffett's big investment in United Health Group and why he continues to sell his Apple stock. Then, let's talk about the Trump administration's plan to take a stake in Intel. Since today is Monday, let's look and see what we have coming up this week. We're going to get a much better read on the health of the consumer and the overall economy because we're getting earnings from giant retailers like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, TJ Maxx, and more. Hundreds of millions of people shop at these retailers, so investors are going to be paying close attention to these earnings calls and commentary from executives on shopping behaviors, sales trends, and how tariffs are impacting prices and profits. Let's run through some headlines, starting with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway just revealed all their portfolio changes from Q2 in their latest 13F filing, and there were some notable moves. Something that's catching the market's attention was Berkshire took a stake in United Health Group, buying more than 5 million shares worth about $1.6 billion. And that news sent United Health stock up more than 10% this morning. It's a good old-fashioned Buffett bump. You know, United Health has had a pretty brutal year. The stock has lost nearly half its value thanks to a Justice Department investigation into shady Medicare billing. There's also public outrage over rising healthcare costs, and their business hasn't been doing great. In fact, the company pulled its earnings outlook earlier this year, and their CEO stepped down back in May. But it looks like Warren Buffett thinks that the company could make a comeback. Now, looking over some of the other moves from Berkshire, what stood out to me was that they continued to trim their Apple position. They sold about 20 million shares in Q2. Now, Apple is still Berkshire's largest holding, but Buffett has been slowly selling off the stock over the last couple of years. Overall, Berkshire was a net seller of stocks last quarter, unloading nearly $7 billion worth and buying just under $4 billion. And they're still hoarding a mountain of cash, about $344 billion. So yeah, it's pretty interesting that Warren Buffett is still keeping a ton of cash on the sidelines, despite the market ripping to new highs this summer. Let's shift gears and talk about Intel. The US government is thinking about becoming a part owner of the struggling chip maker. Bloomberg reported the Trump administration is in talks to take a stake in Intel and inject fresh capital into Intel's delayed factory project in Ohio. That site was once pitched as the future of US chip making, but now it's been pushed back so many times and it's on the calendar for the 2030s. The timing here is pretty interesting. Just last week, President Trump called for Intel CEO Lip Buten to resign over conflicts because of his past business deals in China. 2 days later, Lip Buten visits Trump at the White House, and they have a closed-door meeting, and then now Trump wants to potentially invest in the company. The thing is, Intel is very important for multiple reasons, but the most important, geopolitical. It's really the only US company with the capabilities to produce top-tier chips domestically. But over the last few years, they fell behind other chip makers like Taiwan's TSMC, where most of the high-end AI chips are currently manufactured today. Intel's foundry business, which manufactures chips for other companies, has yet to secure a major client, and their AI chips really haven't made a dent in the market. So maybe a fresh injection of cash could help Intel compete with the likes of TSMC. And if the Trump administration does move forward with this, it's going to be the latest sign of the administration having a very hands-on approach with the economy. Just a few weeks ago, the US government took a stake in a rare earth materials company, MP Materials. And last week, Trump struck a deal with Nvidia and AMD to take a 15% cut of revenues from chip sales sold in China. So it's very unconventional. It's a very hands-on industrial policy, and the administration says it's all aimed at shoring up critical supply chains and competing with China. Having the ability to make AI chips in the US is a matter of national security, and it's giving Intel investors hope. Intel stock jumped more than 7% on Friday when this was announced. That's all the business headlines I have for you. Let's take a look at some stocks making moves. Eli Lilly is on a hot streak this week. The pharma giant was up 3% yesterday, and it's up another 2% this morning after the company announced plans to hike the price of its blockbuster diabetes and weight loss drug Mounjaro in the UK starting next month. Right now, a month's supply of Mounjaro costs about £100 in the UK, but starting September 1st, the price for a month's supply will go up between £130 to £330, so that's a pretty substantial price increase. Now for comparison, a 1 month supply of Mounjaro costs about $1,000 in the US, and that's before insurance and rebates. So it's still going to be way cheaper compared to the US. This move by Eli Lilly comes as President Trump is putting massive amounts of pressure on drug makers to lower US drug prices and raise them overseas to rebalance the cost of medical research. So you might see more pharma giants raise prices all over the world, which I guess investors are excited about. On the flip side, investors are not excited about Applied Materials. Their shares are tanking after the semiconductor equipment supplier cut its revenue and profits forecast for Q3. The CEO blamed the current macroeconomic environment and a slowdown in China, saying that the demand from the big chip customers has been uneven, especially in China, where a 2-year building spree has cooled off. Applied Materials makes the tools needed by chip makers like TSMC to build the chips, and those chip makers seem to be delaying orders for new tools. As a result, shares of Applied Materials are down more than 10% this morning. That's all for today's show. Keep navigating those waters and see you tomorrow.